They laughed at Bruce Lee. One disrespectful insult said right to his face changed the entire atmosphere in seconds. Nobody in that room expected what happened next. But Bruce Lee's reaction was so fast, so intense, that it left everyone completely stunned. That single moment didn't just silence his critics, it became one of the most unforgettable turning points of his life. Bruce Lee had already faced criticism for most of his life, but this moment felt different. The room was crowded with martial artists, trainers, and students who believed they understood strength better than anyone else. Conversations echoed through the training hall while the sound of feet sliding across wooden floors mixed with short bursts of laughter. Bruce stood quietly near the corner, observing everything with calm focus. He wasn't trying to attract attention. He rarely needed to. His confidence came from discipline, not noise. But not everyone respected him. At the time, Bruce Lee's style was still considered unusual by many traditional martial artists. He moved differently, trained differently, and spoke openly about changing old methods that he believed were too limited. Some admired his ideas, but others saw him as arrogant. To them, Bruce was challenging traditions that had existed for generations. His speed was impressive, his dedication undeniable, yet critics continued to question whether his philosophy could survive against real fighters. That day, the tension had already been building for hours. Several men gathered near the center of the room while demonstrations were taking place. Some practiced strikes while others argued about techniques. Bruce watched silently, arms folded, his expression unreadable. A few people glanced at him occasionally, whispering among themselves. They had heard stories about him. Stories about his incredible speed, his one-inch punch, and the way he could overwhelm opponents before they even reacted. But rumors were easy to exaggerate, and many doubted whether any man could truly move the way people claimed Bruce Lee could. One martial artist in particular seemed irritated by Bruce's presence. He was older, respected by many in the room, and deeply loyal to traditional forms. Every time Bruce spoke during earlier discussions, the man shook his head with visible annoyance. He believed martial arts should remain unchanged, passed down, exactly as they were taught decades earlier. Bruce represented the opposite idea. He believed adaptation was necessary. To Bruce, fighting was alive, constantly evolving, and rigid systems only slowed a fighter down. The disagreement stayed quiet at first. Then someone asked Bruce a direct question. "What makes your style so different?" Bruce answered calmly. He explained that real combat was unpredictable. A fighter couldn't rely only on memorized patterns. Speed, timing, awareness, and freedom of movement mattered more than strict tradition. He spoke with confidence but without aggression. Some people listened carefully. Others crossed their arms in disagreement. That older martial artist suddenly laughed. Not a friendly laugh. A sharp, mocking laugh that instantly changed the mood of the room. He stepped forward and looked directly at Bruce Lee before speaking, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "So you think centuries of knowledge are wrong because of your flashy movements?" The room fell silent. Bruce remained calm. "I didn't say they were wrong. But you act like you've discovered something greater," the man snapped. "All I see is a performer trying to impress people." Several people exchanged nervous glances. The insult hung heavily in the air. Bruce had been criticized before, but the man wasn't finished. "You move fast," he continued. "But speed means nothing without honor and discipline. Real martial arts are not circus tricks." A few uncomfortable chuckles came from the crowd. Bruce's eyes narrowed slightly. Anyone paying close attention noticed the shift immediately. His posture changed almost invisibly. The relaxed calmness remained on the surface, but underneath it something sharpened. Bruce wasn't angry in the uncontrolled sense. He was focused, extremely focused. The older man kept talking. "People here respect tradition. But you," he pointed directly at Bruce, "you disrespect everything that came before you." That was the insult that changed everything. Not because Bruce Lee hated criticism. He actually welcomed challenges and debate. but accusing him of disrespecting martial arts struck deeply. Bruce dedicated every part of his life to martial arts. He trained relentlessly, pushed his body beyond exhaustion, studied philosophy, and obsessed over improvement every single day. To suggest he lacked honor was something entirely different. For a brief moment, the entire room waited. Bruce slowly stepped forward. No dramatic expression, no shouting, no threats, just movement. Calm, controlled, immediate. The older martial artist smirked slightly, expecting another debate. Instead, Bruce raised one hand and gestured toward the open floor. "Show me," Bruce said quietly. The challenge was simple, but the atmosphere instantly became electric. People quickly moved aside to create space. Conversations disappeared. Even the sound of movement faded as everyone focused on the two men standing across from each other. Some expected a normal sparring match. Others expected Bruce to lose control emotionally after the insult. But Bruce looked completely composed. The older martial artist stepped into position confidently. He believed experience and tradition were on his side. Bruce stood opposite him with relaxed posture, bouncing lightly on his feet. To some observers, he didn't even appear ready. Then it happened. The older fighter lunged first, attempting a quick strike meant to test Bruce's reactions. What happened next shocked everyone watching. Bruce moved so fast that several people later claimed they barely saw it clearly. Before the attacker could fully extend his strike, Bruce intercepted the movement, shifted angles, and delivered a counter with explosive precision. The exchange lasted less than a second. The older martial artist froze. Gasps spread through the room. Bruce hadn't used unnecessary force. He didn't humiliate the man physically, but his speed, timing, and complete control erased every doubt in the room instantly. The attack had been neutralized before it even developed. The older man stared at Bruce with stunned disbelief. Bruce stepped back calmly. "Speed alone means nothing," Bruce said softly. "But understanding does." Nobody laughed anymore. The energy inside the hall completely changed. The same people who had whispered criticisms earlier now watched Bruce with silent respect. Some looked genuinely unsettled. Others appeared fascinated. They had expected arrogance, but what they witnessed was precision beyond anything they had imagined. The older martial artist tried to recover his composure. "That proves nothing," he muttered. Bruce nodded once. Then he invited him to try again. The second exchange was even faster. This time the older fighter attacked with more aggression, determined not to be embarrassed again. But aggression only made the gap between them more obvious. Bruce flowed around every movement effortlessly. His footwork seemed impossible to predict. He wasn't stiff or mechanical like many traditional fighters of the era. He adapted instantly, reacting with fluid precision that looked almost unreal. Within moments, the older martial artist stumbled backward, unable to land a clean strike. Bruce stopped immediately. He didn't continue attacking. He didn't celebrate. He simply lowered his hands and waited. That silence became more powerful than any victory speech could have been. Everyone in the room understood what had just happened. The insult that was meant to expose Bruce Lee had done the opposite. It revealed exactly why he was different. The moment Bruce Lee reacted, the entire room changed. Just seconds earlier, people had been whispering, smirking, and quietly doubting him. Some thought he was talented but overrated. Others believed his ideas were dangerous to traditional martial arts. But after the first exchange, nobody looked at him the same way again. The older martial artist stepped back carefully, trying to hide the shock on his face. He had expected Bruce to become emotional after the insult. Instead, Bruce responded with terrifying precision and total control. The speed of the counterattack had stunned everyone watching. Even those standing close struggled to explain what they had just seen. A student near the wall whispered, "Did you even see his hand move?" Another shook his head slowly. The silence spreading through the training hall felt heavy. Earlier laughter had completely disappeared. Every eye remained locked on Bruce Lee as he stood calmly in the center of the floor. He wasn't breathing heavily. He wasn't showing anger. His expression stayed focused and unreadable, which somehow made the moment even more intense. The older martial artist clenched his jaw. His pride had taken a hit in front of everyone. "You got lucky," he snapped. Bruce didn't react emotionally. "Try again." The response was immediate and cold. Several people exchanged nervous looks. The tension rising in the room felt impossible to ignore now. Some students quietly stepped farther back, sensing the situation was becoming serious. Others leaned forward with curiosity, desperate to see what would happen next. The older fighter attacked again, this time with much more force. He moved aggressively, attempting to overwhelm Bruce with a combination of strikes designed to pressure him backward. The attack was fast by normal standards. Most people in the room would have struggled to defend against it cleanly. Bruce barely seemed concerned. He shifted his body with incredible fluidity, slipping past each strike by inches. His movements looked effortless, almost relaxed, yet every step placed him perfectly out of danger. He wasn't just reacting, he was reading the attack before it fully happened. One strike came toward Bruce's face. In a split second, Bruce redirected the arm, pivoted his body, and delivered a controlled counterstrike so quickly that the sound echoed through the hall before many people realized what happened. The older martial artist froze again. Gasps erupted across the room. Someone near the back actually stepped forward, in disbelief. "That's impossible." Bruce immediately backed away instead of continuing the attack. His control shocked people almost as much as his speed. He could have humiliated the man completely, but he stopped every time the point was proven. That restraint carried enormous weight among experienced fighters watching the exchange. The older martial artist's confidence was fading rapidly now. Sweat appeared across his forehead. His breathing became uneven. For the first time since the confrontation began, uncertainty entered his eyes. Bruce noticed it instantly. "You're too tense," Bruce said calmly. "You're fighting your own emotions." The comment hit hard because everyone could see it was true. The older man became frustrated by Bruce's composure. He expected arrogance or rage, but Bruce remained completely centered. Every insult thrown at him earlier now felt meaningless compared to what people were witnessing directly. A younger fighter standing near the wall quietly muttered, "He's controlling everything." Another nodded without taking his eyes off Bruce. The room had shifted from skepticism to fascination. Some students who originally doubted Bruce now studied his movements carefully, trying to understand what made him so different. It wasn't only speed. Plenty of fighters were fast. What shocked people was how efficient he was. No wasted motion, no unnecessary tension. Every movement flowed naturally into the next. The older martial artist launched another attack out of frustration rather than strategy. That decision made things worse. Bruce instantly adapted. He stepped off center, intercepted the attack, and trapped the man's arm before countering with unbelievable precision. The exchange ended so quickly that several people audibly gasped again. One student actually dropped the training pads he had been holding. The sound echoed sharply through the silent hall. Nobody laughed anymore. The mocking energy from earlier had completely vanished. In its place was something much stronger. Respect mixed with disbelief. People realized they were witnessing a level of skill far beyond what they expected. The older martial artist slowly pulled away, breathing heavily. "Now." Bruce lowered his hands once more. "You rely too much on patterns," Bruce explained. "Real fighting changes every second." Nobody interrupted him. Earlier, people challenged every word Bruce said. Now they listened carefully. Even those who still disagreed with his philosophy couldn't deny what they had just seen with their own eyes. The atmosphere became strangely tense and quiet. Some fighters avoided looking directly at Bruce. Others stared at him with intense curiosity. A few older instructors whispered among themselves, clearly unsettled by how effective Bruce's methods looked against traditional techniques. The older martial artist suddenly charged again, this time fueled almost entirely by embarrassment. The attack came harder and faster than before. Bruce reacted instantly. His footwork exploded with sudden speed, creating angles the older man couldn't predict. Bruce's movements seemed almost unnatural to observers unfamiliar with his training style. He flowed around attacks like water, striking openings before they even fully appeared. One clean counter stopped the exchange completely. The older martial artist stumbled backward several steps. The room erupted into shocked murmurs. Someone whispered, "He's reading him." Another replied quietly, "No, he's ahead of him." That sentence captured exactly what made Bruce Lee so frightening to watch. He didn't merely react quickly. He seemed mentally ahead of every movement before it happened. His understanding of timing and distance looked completely different from anything most people in the room had experienced. Bruce remained calm while everyone else felt overwhelmed by tension. He glanced around the room briefly. Nobody smirked now. Nobody whispered insults anymore. The emotional balance of the entire hall had shifted toward him completely. The older martial artist finally stopped attacking. His breathing was heavy, his confidence shattered. He looked around the room and realized people no longer viewed him as the dominant figure in control of the situation. Bruce stepped closer but kept his posture relaxed. "I'm not against tradition," he said quietly. "I'm against limitation." The statement landed with incredible force because it perfectly matched what everyone had just witnessed. Bruce wasn't disrespecting martial arts. He was expanding them. Several younger students looked visibly inspired. They had grown up believing martial arts had to remain rigid and fixed forever. Watching Bruce move shattered that belief completely. His style looked alive, adaptable, and practical in ways they had never considered before. An older instructor standing near the entrance folded his arms slowly. "He moves differently," he admitted quietly. Another instructor nodded. "Because he thinks differently." That realization spread across the room rapidly. Bruce Lee wasn't winning because of brute strength. He wasn't relying on intimidation or aggression. He was using timing, awareness, adaptability, and efficiency at a level few people there had ever seen firsthand. The older martial artist lowered his eyes briefly. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. The tension that filled the room earlier had transformed into stunned silence. Even the students who initially doubted Bruce now looked at him with admiration. Some seemed almost shaken by how quickly the entire confrontation had changed. Bruce stepped back toward the edge of the training floor calmly, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But everyone knew something extraordinary had happened. The insult meant to embarrass Bruce Lee had instead exposed a massive gap between old assumptions and real ability. People entered that room believing Bruce was simply a flashy fighter with controversial ideas. They now saw someone operating on an entirely different level of understanding. Every movement Bruce made afterward drew attention. When he adjusted his stance, people watched. When he spoke quietly to a student nearby, people listened. Even his calm breathing seemed to command the room now. The energy had completely shifted in his favor. No official announcement marked the moment. No dramatic speech followed. Yet everyone present understood they had witnessed something unforgettable. The reaction Bruce Lee gave after that insult didn't just silence criticism for the rest of the day. It permanently changed how many people in that room viewed martial arts itself. After the confrontation ended, the atmosphere inside the training hall never returned to what it had been before. People continued talking in low voices, replaying every movement they had witnessed from Bruce Lee. Some students gathered near the corners of the room, attempting to imitate his footwork. Others debated quietly about whether traditional martial arts needed to evolve. The insult that was meant to discredit Bruce had unexpectedly forced everyone to question their assumptions. Bruce himself remained calm. He didn't celebrate what happened. He didn't demand recognition or attention. While others continued discussing the exchange with shock and excitement, Bruce simply walked toward the side of the hall and began adjusting his training equipment. That reaction confused many people. Most fighters would have enjoyed the moment after proving themselves publicly. Bruce behaved as if the entire confrontation was just another lesson. But internally, Something had changed. The insult kept replaying. In his mind, "You disrespect everything that came before you." Those words stayed with him long after the room emptied. Bruce understood criticism better than most people realized. Throughout his journey, he had constantly faced resistance from traditionalists who believed martial arts should never change. Yet hearing the accusations spoken directly in front of so many people hit differently. It forced Bruce to think deeply about the path he was taking. That night, he trained longer than usual. While others rested, Bruce continued practicing combinations, footwork, and explosive drills until sweat soaked through his clothes. His movements remained sharp despite exhaustion. Every strike carried purpose. Every adjustment reflected intense concentration. He wasn't training to impress anyone anymore. He was searching for something greater: complete efficiency, complete freedom, complete understanding. Bruce had always believed martial arts should reflect reality, not tradition alone. The confrontation in the hall strengthened that belief. Permanently, he realized many martial artists were trapped by rigid systems. They memorized forms perfectly but struggled when situations became unpredictable. Bruce saw limitations everywhere. Fighters moved according to rehearsed patterns instead of natural reactions. They protected tradition so fiercely that they stopped adapting. That realization pushed Bruce harder than ever before. Over the following months, his training methods evolved rapidly. He began rejecting unnecessary movements completely. If a technique wasted time or energy, he removed it. If a stance limited mobility, he changed it. Bruce became obsessed with directness and speed. He studied boxing footwork, fencing timing, wrestling principles, and countless other disciplines, taking useful ideas from each one. Many people criticized him for this approach. Traditional martial artists argued that he was abandoning purity. Bruce disagreed completely. To him, truth mattered more than style loyalty. He believed combat was universal. A useful technique remained useful regardless of where it came from. The insult from that day became fuel. Every criticism strengthened his determination instead of weakening it. Friends close to Bruce noticed the change almost immediately. He became even more disciplined than before. His workouts intensified. His focus sharpened. He spent hours studying movement, reaction time, and human mechanics. Sometimes he practiced the same motion hundreds of times until it felt effortless. He often repeated one idea during conversations: absorb what is useful, reject what is useless. That philosophy became central to everything he did. Bruce no longer wanted to fit inside the boundaries others accepted. He wanted to break those boundaries completely. The confrontation had shown him something important. Proving people wrong physically wasn't enough. He needed to build a philosophy so powerful that it could reshape how people understood martial arts itself. That mindset eventually led him toward creating his own approach, not a traditional style, not a rigid system, something alive and adaptable. Bruce called it Jeet Kune Do. The idea behind it shocked many martial artists at the time. Jeet Kune Do wasn't built around fixed patterns or strict forms. It focused on efficiency, interception, speed, and freedom of expression. Bruce wanted fighters to adapt naturally instead of becoming trapped inside mechanical systems. The roots of that philosophy connected directly back to moments like the insult in the training hall. That experience forced Bruce to clarify exactly what he believed. He realized people feared change because change threatened identity. Traditional fighters often connected their entire sense of pride to old systems. When Bruce challenged limitations within those systems, they took it personally. But Bruce wasn't trying to destroy martial arts. He wanted to free them from restriction. As his reputation grew, more students became interested in learning from him. Some arrived skeptical. Others arrived curious after hearing rumors about his speed and unconventional methods. Bruce trained them relentlessly. He pushed students to think independently instead of blindly copying movements. During sessions, he constantly emphasized awareness, timing, adaptability, and realism. He wanted fighters capable of responding naturally under pressure, not performers trapped inside memorized routines. Many students struggled at first. Bruce demanded total focus. If someone relied too heavily on rigid patterns, he exposed the weakness. Immediately, he moved with incredible fluidity during sparring, forcing students to abandon predictable habits. Some found the experience frustrating. Others found it revolutionary. The more Bruce taught, the more confident he became in his vision. The insult that once angered him gradually transformed into motivation. Instead of trying to gain acceptance from traditional circles, Bruce concentrated on building something entirely new. He understood many people would continue criticizing him no matter what he accomplished. That no longer mattered. Results mattered. Truth mattered. Growth mattered. His philosophy eventually reached far beyond martial arts. Bruce began speaking openly about self-expression, personal freedom, and breaking mental limitations. He believed people trapped themselves inside fixed identities the same way fighters trapped themselves inside rigid styles. To Bruce, true mastery required constant evolution. Be water, he famously explained later. Flexible, adaptable, impossible to confine. That mindset grew directly from years of resistance, criticism, and moments like the confrontation in the Aoi Hall. Every insult pushed him further toward understanding himself and his purpose. As Bruce's influence expanded, even some former critics began reconsidering their views. Martial artists who once dismissed him started studying his methods secretly. Fighters noticed how effective his concepts were under pressure. Speed, efficiency, mobility, and adaptability became increasingly respected across combat sports over time. The very ideas people mocked Bruce for eventually helped transform martial arts globally. But Bruce never forgot the resistance he faced early on. He understood success didn't appear suddenly. It was built through countless moments where he had to stand firm against doubt and criticism. The insult in that crowded training hall represented one of those defining moments, a moment that forced him to sharpen both his skill and philosophy. People who witnessed the confrontation often talked about Bruce's physical speed afterward, but the deeper impact came from something else. His mindset. The ability to remain calm under disrespect. The ability to answer criticism through action instead of emotion. The ability to transform humiliation into fuel for growth. That reaction became part of what made Bruce Lee unforgettable. He refused to let insults control him emotionally. Instead, he used them as pressure to refine himself further. Every challenge became an opportunity to improve. Every doubter became motivation. Years later, Bruce Lee's influence spread far beyond martial arts schools. Athletes, actors, fighters, and millions of ordinary people admired his philosophy because it represented something universal: the refusal to remain limited by other people's expectations. The insult that once echoed across a crowded training hall ultimately pushed Bruce toward becoming far more than just a martial artist. It pushed him toward becoming a symbol of evolution, discipline, and fearless self-expression.